Part 5 of the Prince Alfred's Pass covers a very short section of only 1 kilometer and is probably the most scenic section of the entire Langkloof. It includes a visit to the Convict's grave as well as 3 narrow bridge crossings. If you intend driving this mega pass, it's important to watch all the videos sequentially to gain a complete perspective of what to expect. Here the road winds its way through the narrowest part of the Langkloof, surrounded by towering cliffs, tumbling waterfalls and calming scenery. Over this 1 kilometer section, the road traverses the river 3 times via narrow concrete bridges, which have long since replaced Thomas Paine's original stinkwood beams, which lasted about 40 years. Should you meet any oncoming traffic, one of the vehicles will probably need to reverse back to a wider point where passing would be possible. From this point, the road narrows appreciably as it twists along the contours of the steep-sided ravines. It's best not to drive this section with a caravan. Due to the narrow width of the road and the numerous blind corners, stopping anywhere at any of these interesting points is actually quite difficult without obstructing the roadway. The best place to park is just after the bridge at the Convict's grave, where there's space for about 4 vehicles. One can then walk up or down the kloof from this point, as the distances are actually quite short and the gradients are easy. When one arrives at the 3rd bridge, there's a small signpost marked as the Convict's grave. Looking upstream, there are a series of little waterfalls as the river tumbles down towards the Kerbooms River a few kilometers away. This is a burial spot fit for a king, and the convict that died here doing hard labor must be having a good rest in one of the most exquisite places on earth. This little river becomes a raging torrent after heavy rain, and Bain's stonework and the riverbank reinforcing still stands firmly in place 150 years on. It's worth taking the few stone steps down below the little bridge to examine how the road builders cleverly constructed the supports, which melt in with the natural rocks below. Bain accorded his labourers more dignity and respect than was the norm with convict labour in those days, and the gravesite speaks volumes for his ability to work with people in the most efficient and humane manner. At the apex of this corner, there's sufficient parking space for 3 or 4 vehicles, and it's the only safe place to park on this section of the Langkloof. After crossing the bridge at the Convict's grave, the road widens somewhat and the gradients flatten out, and the going becomes a lot easier. There are another 3 bridges to cross before the road settles down onto the western side of the river. In 1863, Thomas Paine moved on site and took charge of construction of what was to become known as the Prince Alfred's Pass. The work was carried out over a period of 4 years, using up to 250 convict labourers. Once Paine had completed the first 50 kilometers from the southern side, he based himself at De Vlucht with his workforce, where the new road springs away from the easier gradients of the old wagon route up to the Klein Langkloof to claw its way up over the rocky slopes to Avontuur. Bain wrote the following report in his journal about the Langkloof. The work is as formidable and near the waterfalls more formidable than any road yet undertaken in the colony, and the cost will be very heavy. Considerable blasting was required, and stone retaining walls, some more than 16 meters high, were the order of the day, and substantial fills were needed to ease the curvature in some of the side valleys. Along this section, the road crosses the Voogts River and Rietpoort 7 times. Bain used stinkwood beams set in grooves in the solid rock to support his bridges. In 1930, the stinkwood beams, having served for over 40 years, were replaced with concrete members. The cement cappings on this bridge wall were a later addition. Bain's work was sufficiently advanced for the postcard to use the new route from September 1866, and May of the next year saw the completion of the pass. The Chief Inspector of Roads, Mr. Robinson, reported the following. I inspected the whole of the undertaking, and I have to express my great admiration of the ability displayed by Mr. Thomas Paine in its construction. The work is, I believe, at least equal to works of this kind in any part of the world. This video ends at the 17th kilometer at one of the sharpest corners on the entire pass. Be sure to watch part 6 of the Prince Alfred's Pass.